Welcome back to On the Light. I'm your host, Susan Johnson. Today, I'm joined by Jennie Williford, a longtime practitioner and teacher of Iyengar Yoga. Jennie has spent the past 2 decades studying, teaching, volunteering, and helping build Iyengar Yoga communities across the Midwest and beyond. In this episode, Jennie shares how she first discovered Iyengar Yoga, what drew her deeply into the method, and her experiences studying at the Ramamani Iyengar Memorial Yoga Institute in Pune. We talk about the powerful presence of Guruji and Geetaji, the teachings of Prashant Iyengar, and the importance of community and service in sustaining this living tradition. Please enjoy this episode of On the Light. Thank you for doing this with me.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's dive right into it. Tell me, how did you come into Iyengar Yoga?
So, yoga itself, I was probably not exactly knowledgeable of or curious of until some friends that I worked with were like, let's go do this yoga class. And there was no studios at the time. There's nothing really to go to except for continuing ed. So I ended up in continuing ed with just a general yoga person. That was, I think, 1998 or so. And then we took for a semester. And I always say that it was a good thing to have committed to that semester because I didn't really like it. I have a difficult body, a stiff body, so I was not really excited about it. But we stuck around, and by that end of the semester, I felt something was happening, but I wasn't really sure. And then we went again, and the teacher had changed, the venue changed. They had to move us out of like the fluorescent light room. It was at the Texas Christian University campus, so they moved us like to this lobby of a church or something. So the whole vibe had changed. And the teacher at the beginning, her first class, she introduced herself and then was like, well, I'm very interested in the philosophy of yoga. So if that's going to be a problem for anyone, please let me know. And I was like, why would it be a problem? Interesting. So anyway, I took with her specifically for a while, and she was the one who actually introduced me to the sutras.
Okay.
Long story, slightly shorter. I ended up going to Dallas because I lived in Fort Worth at the time. And so Dallas was my introduction to actual studio, like there's actual studios and there's more styles. And so I had first landed at more of an eclectic studio that had all kinds of different yoga. So I tried all of them. And I did like them all, but the Iyengar class, I just kept feeling like that was what was kind of promised in the sutras, because I mean, I'm already, energetic enough. So I don't need to be, when I jump around or do a lot, I love the vinyasa. I love all of the things, but it would always leave me way up here and, way more in a place that was not necessarily what I thought this idea of quieting my mind or being more steady in myself or understanding myself better. So the Iyengar classes, I just kept going back to, and I would say that was my like draw into Iyengar Yoga. And then that teacher who taught at these eclectic places were like, hey, there's this actual Iyengar studio over there in another part of town. So I ended up then just going to that studio. I'm sure I can't remember fully and specifically, but I'm sure I went to the other studio as well. Still, I had made friends and still like those teachers, but I also committed to going to the Iyengar studio. And so I was working 40 hours a week, and I drove an hour and a half at least twice a week for yoga. And I guess it was actually 2 hours if you count the back and forth. So it definitely drew me in. Main introduction. And then teaching and that all came later. I didn't think that I would teach at all, but my previous life was being a zookeeper. So I kind of knew that that wasn't going to maybe last forever.
I never
and
knew.
then the teacher that I had started with that was really, and I always say that she was my probably my best teacher because she knew after I had taken with her and I took privately with her for a long time, and she was the one who sent me away. It's like, you need to go to like an actual studio in the big city. And so that's why I ended up there. But she was leaving Fort Worth. She was actually moving to Dallas and needed somebody to teach her classes. And I was like, why not? And I
Mhm.
would say that that was also a really interesting experience because a lot of the students that were still taking with her, I had started yoga with. So that was
Oh.
a little bit intimidating to show up as the teacher, but I had under my belt by that time the introductory syllabus. And I had started, since she asked me to do these classes, I had started sort of thinking about it, thinking about teaching Iyengar Yoga in particular. And so I saw pretty instantly the second that I was teaching in our method and Iyengar method, how instantly the improvement, the again, the steadiness, the stability, the ability to really hone in and gain knowledge of self was really obvious in some ways. So I think that that's again another little hook. So I think it slowly kept hooking me in
Yeah.
different ways in different places. So
And you've traveled around quite a bit.
I have. I started in Texas. We moved because my husband's job, which you wouldn't think would be really transitory. He's a PA, medical PA, but for a very specific specialty. So we ended up in Illinois, and we were there for about 10 years. And I ran a studio there in Rockford, Illinois for a long time. And then we moved to Montana briefly, mainly because there at the time wasn't anything here in La Crosse. And so it was sort of one of these moments where it's like, well, we love Montana, let's go. And there actually was a job for him, and there was actually Iyengar Yoga in Kalispell, Montana at the time. So there we were. That didn't last very long, but then we ended up back here. So
Hmm.
we really love Montana. There's still a great Iyengar group there
Yeah.
in Kalispell, and yeah,
Mm.
everybody knows where La Crosse, Wisconsin is, I think. But that's
I do.
what brought me here. Yes.
So
Yeah.
at what point did you start going to Pune?
First trip to India I took was in 2003, and it was with Ramamani Patel and Mukesh Desai. So doing the yoga and sound with those two. But my first trip to Pune and Rimi was 2008.
Okay.
So Guruji was still around. My first two trips, Guruji was still around. And I can't, for the life of me, I was sort of thinking about that. And I was like, why? I wonder why. I mean, I guess I just you go to Pune, people say go to Pune, so you go to Pune. Um, and I did fall in love with India. I think my friend Jen, my travel buddy, my partner, practice partner, also we were talking about this because there's part of me that feels like if I had landed in Pune first, I may not have gone back to India because
Mm.
India is amazing and it is fabulous. And so I think that gave me the courage to go different places and finally land at the Institute. But landing at this Institute is amazing. And my first trip there, I'm sure I felt some, trepidation. I had already, I guess it had been 10 or more years of yoga itself. So, I felt okay as far as practice, but I'm not sure I knew what to expect. And I had a healthy, I think, skepticism for systems and hierarchical systems. And my mom's a very strong feminist, and that's kind of was where I was growing up in that kind of environment. So this idea of guru, this idea of okay, what is he going to be sitting and, expecting a lot of praise or a lot of, I had no idea what that was going to be like. And I can't remember if I had seen video. Maybe I saw the movie, Ultimate Freedom or something. But my impression was, I remember thinking that if we're there in the institute and all it is sort of like praising this person, I would not appreciate that or feel whatever. That was the story I was telling myself anyway. So I show up in first practice. Everybody's excited and to be there, and it was my first time, and so you're a little lost, but I mean, you're in a practice room with everybody practicing yoga, so there you are. It's home. You kind of knew if he's walked in the room, everybody goes hush, but then we were all practicing, and suddenly a sort of mass of people sort of got up and started moving in one direction, and I was like, what's happening? And so I look up, and here comes Guruji walking past, and I think my best impression was that he just beelined it to his corner to practice, and it did not matter to him at all who was throwing themselves at his feet or pranams or everything. Everybody was there, do what they felt they needed to be doing, and I just sat and watched because I was curious, and also it's new. And yeah, it was nice to see his focus was practice, and his focus was to get to practice, and that was it. So then you went back to practice, everybody back on their mat, everybody back to doing their practice. So that was my first impression of Guruji and Iyengar. And then after that, he was still in the back of the room teaching through Abhi. So Abhi had just started, or I don't know when she had started teaching, but she was there teaching, and he'd be in the back. Don't you notice this? Don't you notice that? Can't you? So it was actually very good for me as well, because, again, it's like this quintessential having that experience of him teaching her as a teacher was really, really fun. And then them practicing together was just always a joy. So seeing just his joy around practice and the way they practice and how everybody practiced together, I think was just a really, and that continues. I mean, that continues today despite his absence. And I think that's what always has drawn me back again and again and again, is that idea of being able to just be in practice there. Because despite whatever's happening over here, we all know, even in this room, even in our practice spaces, life still is right outside that door, dog and cat and everybody included. So to be able to really be there and just be practicing in that environment, I think is just priceless.
So. Yeah, it is. So Abhi taught some then. So I'm thinking, because my trips to Pune were in 2006 and then in 2009. I don't remember Abhijata being there much in 2006. And that's how my memory is. But definitely in 2009, I also experienced that teacher kind of training from Guruji, which was, especially as a newer teacher at the time, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And yeah, it was such a great way to actually, because Guruji wasn't teaching otherwise, so it was getting his teaching through her, like you said.
Exactly. Yeah, and outside of that, I'm sure, I have obviously seen him on videos and convention things, but it was just really, people do talk about his presence and how he was a smaller person. I can't remember how tall he is, but he took up the entire room. I think all the Iyengars do. Yeah. So it really is a family trait, and runs through all of them. It can enter a room, and Geeta would enter the room and fill up the whole room. And so yeah, I definitely had obviously more class with Geeta. So it was 2008, 11, 14. 18 and then just came back recently. So yeah, so a lot of Gita, mostly Gita in the teachings throughout my visits, aside from this one. This is the first one that Gita wasn't around either. So, because we were there just before her passing in 2018. She was doing those 2 weeks. I mean, just again, brilliant. 2 weeks. They had just started, I can't remember when that all started. Those 2 week, I wouldn't call them intensives, but they did little shorter 2 week intensives, kind of workshopy things for countries that didn't have access to senior teachers and had smaller communities. So they would invite those countries to, send delegates that weren't, the 8 years or the whatever kind of experience was needed at the time. And those of us who were there for the month, if they had a contingency come for 2 weeks of that, we were going over to that venue for those 2 weeks. And it was great. It was great to see, obviously great to have Gita teaching. But the other great thing about that was to see Prashant teaching, a more beginner group of people, which you don't get. You go to Remy even to this day, and you were always in his class as an advanced student or however you want to call that. But that ability, even a first visit, you were, before anyway, a little bit more controlled in your amount of Prashant classes that you were going to. And so it was nice to see him in that element as well, with people that maybe weren't as experienced, maybe didn't know who he was. I think that so much of that is important because we don't have those voices. If I never had direct teaching with BKS Iyengar, I think it's important for us to hear those voices and to have those voices come through either the video or, again, not just having the experienced students or the to have that. So yeah, that was nice to be there for that kind of thing. And then the most recent visit, every visit has its own kind of vibe to it, I guess, or I try not to have like an expectation. I do want to work on things. If I have these 3 hours that I get to actually work completely on something, I'll usually be like, oh, I really need to work on this or that or the other thing. But I try not to have like, oh, this is definitely going to be what's going to happen when I get there. And, everybody was excited about the new bathrooms, and those are very nice. So there's a bit, Abby's made updates to the Institute. The entryway is, I guess I learned that it was the old entryway. It actually was where the first entry to get into the Institute was, which I only knew the entry when you went back towards their house and then into that space. So now you go more directly in, which I guess was the original entryway, and I don't know all that.
Like from the street?
Yeah, from the street side. Yeah. And so there's updates like that, but just in general, all the teachers, again, priceless. These are people who either you've seen for, decades in the time between 2008 and now. There's teachers, of course, from that and before. And then there's all the new people that are learning from Abhi in the same way that Guruji taught her. So those are that kind of lineage. To me, I think it's rare and beautiful to watch and to see, and everybody is so giving and excited to share, Iyengar Yoga, as we all are. We had, of course, classes with them, classes with Abhi, but they also have started, although I don't know if it's going to continue or if it was special. I don't think it was special, because even though I've had friends coming back from, month after month, and they're like, oh, these are just special things. But they have these little breakouts for the foreigners. And the foreigners are a small number now. There were only 15 of us for the month of September, so it's small. And
that now that you say that, when I'm in the Zoom classes, it's mostly Indian students. Okay.
Yeah. Which is huge. It used to be in that first first, floor hall, it was mostly all the foreigners that were there, but filling the hall. And so that has shifted, but I think it's a really nice shift. And obviously focusing in on their local community and who's coming and how that's going, and developing those students into teachers.
Mhm.
We had a really fun, big standout was a tour. you know, we've been there. Most of us had been there before. There was a couple of people who hadn't been to Pune before, but most of us have gone to the Institute before, and we've all been in the Institute, go upstairs and observe classes, or in the library or whatever. But they did a tour, like an actual tour with one of the assistant teachers who was just delightful. And you could tell really, loved the Institute, loved being there and sharing. And it was just a really beautiful way to see the Institute and get that history as well. So yeah, they're doing fun things like that, as far as, breakouts of different poses. The suggestion box is an actual suggestion box, which is really good. I don't know if people had ever used the suggestion box before, but now it's nicely painted, and Abby really told us to use it. So I think a lot of the little breakout things that we did were from the suggestion box, that people put things in the box. So yeah, it's just really, really nice. And you feel like you're part of that larger community, I would say, in Rimi, instead of just a visitor, which always kind of was fine. I mean, obviously, we're there to visit, but you feel a little bit more, I think, embraced in these smaller groups. And yeah, you get to know everybody.
Well, that's good to know for those of us who haven't been in a few years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It wasn't sitting in the front. I mean, it could change again. Who knows depending on the months,
Yeah.
the amount of foreigners that come or don't come, I think is always how they might do it. But instead of, standing in the front and before a class announcing all the like rules and regs that used to happen, Abby pulls us all aside, just the foreigners, and gives us all
Oh,
the
okay. Hmm.
the information, and again, to use the suggestion box, and
Hmm.
asked us what we wanted to be working on or learn, or it's much more, why are you here? And then, why are you here? But like, really, why are you here? And what do you want to learn? And so it's kind of nice. I'd say that that's one of the bigger changes, of just sort of feeling, instead of joining that giant group, they're a
Hmm.
little bit more contained and feel a part of the community.
So I'd like to ask you, you had mentioned that much of your teaching, the bulk of your, sorry, classes there for a period of time were from Geetaji. Can you talk at all about your experiences with her, or maybe some special stories that you have, memories of
I
her?
don't have any, like, I do have one story that I was just actually telling my husband, but I never had any like personal interactions with the Iyengars outside of that class time, or down in the library with Guruji sitting at the desk, or I never personally asked them any questions. But she, again, was kind of somebody who, the physical practice of yoga, I love it. Obviously, I make the joke that it's not really a joke, it's the truth, that my bloomers are my superhero costume, because it's like the time I really feel like I am myself, my full embodied self. And otherwise, you know, all social norms and fitting in, and all, being an awkward, always been sort of an awkward person, always a little bit, that stiffer person, that not on the cover of Yoga Journal, put it that way. So it's one of those things where Gita also embodied that. It wasn't necessarily the poses, it was the energy in the poses, the mind behind the poses. And I'll always remember one thing stood out that she would say, or she said at least once, that she was like, I can adjust your body, right? I can see you physically, but I can't adjust your mind. That's up to you guys. It's up to us to adjust our mind in practice. That's one thing like that kind of rings in my ears a lot. And then I do remember the Yoganushasana on the very first ginormous convention. I think that was 2011. No,
Okay.
2014.
Okay.
It was right after Guruji passed. So nobody knew if it was going to happen. It was questionable, but she was asked to do it. So she was there. We're all mourning. Everybody is, there. So the energy, of course, is great already that we're all there together. I think it was 3,000 people or something. Don't quote me on that, but it's like 3,000 people from all over the world coming together for Iyengar Yoga. She has always struggled with health issues. And so that ability to, walk into this stadium, ginormous stadium with, thousands of people there awaiting her arrival. And then, either needing help to walk in, whatever, can't remember. But all I remember very clearly is her walking in, and she had her dupatta, which is the scarf that Indians wear. And, she usually wore her bloomers and then had her other clothing on top. And so she was coming through, and she just threw whatever was going on, again, disappeared behind her, and the dupatta came flying off, and she beelined again. It's like this beeline to teaching, beeline to the stage. And that whole, it was just miraculous to watch her teach that in ginormous stadium. And again, feed us all with her teaching in that kind of group under those circumstances, I think was just,
Yeah.
it's just, it reminds me and always reminded me that despite whatever struggles we might all be going through, that energy of yoga, the energy we put behind practice or the energy we put behind teaching is just, it's endless. She had an endless force that fed her, that was just, yeah, again, pretty spectacular to experience and to watch, even when her practice wasn't, drop overs. Both, all of them, of course, because Iyengar, right, watching his practice turn to what it needed to be, but absolutely taking care of themselves no matter what's going on. And I think that, to me, is a huge reminder of Iyengar Yoga and its longevity and its ability to keep us moving, keep us lively, even if it can't keep us completely moving, even lively and energetic under any of those circumstances. Definitely a drive. So that would be for me, like when I think of Gita, that swelling energy. That's what I feel kind of come up with her. And then Prashant is Prashant's Prashant. But from my first trip, and I benefited from a teacher that I study with for a long time also, that adores Prashant, and, definitely put some of that emphasis in her own teaching. So I felt I already knew what to expect, from Prashant and how he presents the subject, but just, it's those moments. And again, Remy is that place where, and this is how I perceive taking class with him, is that ability to practice. He's there to give you, he's master of story. So sometimes he's sort of in story form, I would say, in my experience, my first couple of experience, just metaphor.
Yeah.
Being able to explain the subject in all kinds of different ways for hopefully everybody to understand in some, at some point. And then he sends you into posture, and it's like, do what we were just talking about, basically. And he gives you that time and the space in class to not be giving direction the entire time. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that a lot. And it's, again, one of those things you're only going to get really in Rimi, at Rimi, and with Prashant, I feel, is those moments to just try to sink into those deeper aspects of the practice itself. Because we do know the points, to his point. We do have a lot of points. We all have our points. We all have a lot of points to be doing. But there's that, again, the juiciness of it that comes from some of the other things. So,
And yeah, I have to correct you because before you said you never got to ask questions to any of the Iyengars personally, but you have. I
I do, yes.
was
And actually, and I did actually have a moment. I was a tag along. I was not the person, but what year was that? It was either must have been 2018. I feel like it was our last trip. But I was able to be in an interview. Someone was interviewing Prashant for, I feel like it was for the convention magazine or something. Anyway, she was tasked to do this, and we just happened to be friendly. And she asked me to come with her, and I said, "Sure, I'll come."
yeah,
so,
sure.
so it was fun. That was nice. Again, sort of just interview format with him, but it was great. And then, yes, I love being able to ask questions. So appreciate that a lot. The Saturday mornings, if people aren't already coming, I don't know why. Because my biggest, I'll say, you asked that question, like, what are your lessons from each of them, Bikas and Gita and Prashant? And for me, again, it's not anything specific, but man, the widening of the consciousness and of my knowledge of yoga and its place in our lives, in the world, in the universe, that has been, I wouldn't say mind blowing lightly, because it really is mind blowing a lot of the time.
Well, and there's been such an expansion since I've started studying with him more, and since these Saturday sessions started, and just being able to spend the kind of time I've been able to with him. I think what you're also saying is like your knowledge of the subject has just blown up. And I don't even feel like I hardly know anything.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the
Mhm.
fact that he is so generously will answer all of our questions. So my mom, I know my mom comes to them as well, and she loves them. And we've now started this thing to read his chapter books on the sutras. But some of the questions over the years, and I think about this a lot because I do try to understand at that whatever deeper level, whatever that means, but we're so linear, and all the from the very beginning, the questions were so point A to point Z. How do we know what our dharma is? How do we know
Yeah.
if we're following this? How do we know if we're doing
Okay.
it? And basically it's like, well, you don't really ever know. But and then I'll feel like, oh, I totally get this now. I totally get it. We're okay. There's no beginning. There's no end. There's no this. And then I'll ask a question, and I realize I got myself caught in that point A to point Z again.
Mhm.
And this thinking that there's going to be a concrete item, because we want it to be as concrete as our limbs and,
Yeah.
body. But again, it's beauty of Iyengar Yoga. It can be from everywhere as graspable as our straight limbs or straightening our limbs, to, again, that whole idea of consciousness and the cosmology and the history and the
Mhm.
it is mind blowing, for lack of better words. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that a lot. And I think that, not knowing Gita well enough, or because having experience with him, but even through all of your conversations and interviews, it's obvious they're happy. And I mean, Abhi as well. Everybody wants to know what our thoughts about yoga are, and how we're learning. And I think that, Prashant brings up BKS Iyengar's frustrations sometimes. I feel like Geeta probably expressed her frustrations at times of what we were catching or not catching. And I just think that it was always on their mind of what we're catching or not catching. And I think to take advantage of these moments where we are able to ask questions and be freely confused about things, or not know everything and be able to ask a question, I think are so great. It is the beauty of our kind of our small. I mean, I do think that overall we're a smaller worldwide community than maybe the vastness of yoga as it has taken over the world in popularity. But I think it also makes us able to learn at a depth that's very different than some other maybe styles, not knowing all of them though. So
Right. So you were there in September?
yeah,
Uh,
September.
okay. Were there any of the bigger programs there? Was that during Patanjali Jayanti? No, you missed that one. Okay.
Nope, it was quiet. And we actually, before we went, we all got an email saying that Abhi wasn't teaching, but then she taught. So I don't know why we got that email. Maybe the plans changed or something, but it was great. Yeah, nothing, no big programs, just the little breakout sessions that we had.
hmm hmm
Yeah, I think Patanjali Jayanti was right after. I actually have avoided the big celebrations a lot because I'm
Yeah.
not really one for the big party, the big convention, because it was the first one and because it was right after Guruji's passing. I think that was the
Yeah.
one and only time that I really was like, sure, I want to be. And there is an energy to it. I love it. But again, the reason that I love going to Rimi is because
Yeah.
I get to do my thing and not have to necessarily be in that big to do.
I completely agree. Yeah.
The one thing I did miss is, Gita, the previous 2011, I think, she was doing her Gita talks, her Bhagavad Gita talks, and those were really delightful. I really liked those as well. So, and it was the one time that my husband came. He was meeting me, and then we were traveling afterwards. And I was like, "You're here. It's the one night you're here in Pune. You have to go." But he landed literally, I think his flight was late or something. And he landed, of course, middle of the morning, probably barely slept. And then I'm like dragging him down the road
Mhm.
to Rimi to sit in this room to listen to Geeta Iyengar talk about the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm sure he was like, oh God, falling asleep while I'm just like, but here, but look.
Yeah.
And, but I'm glad he got to have that experience. He knows where so I think that's rare for spouses who get left behind for long periods of time due to yoga. It's nice for him to be able to be in that space and actually see Geeta Iyengar in person and
Sure, it
have
was
a
for you to share that with him.
mm-hmm.
As it is for Ella, I mean, I feel like all of us who have this, Iyengar yoga is such a huge part of our life. It's rare that the people, our family and closest friends sometimes just have no idea what we're doing, what we're studying, why is this taking up so much of Susan's time? I was able to take my niece when Guruji died. Kristen and Lee in Minneapolis had a memorial type of a ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to bring my niece because I was having auntie time with her that weekend. And for her to and she was young, but just to be able to see that, I just felt it was nice to have a family member maybe get a glimpse of what it is I'm doing.
And I do. I feel very lucky. I mean, Josh, he will do yoga, he has gone to workshops and other things with me, and feathered pipe. He went to feathered pipe with me one year, done some other classes here and there, but it's not something that he's like dug into. And then my mother, who she will always say she started yoga first, but I don't remember that. And then when I started getting into Iyengar yoga, particularly and teaching, she started going to the Houston. She's from Houston, Iyengar Yoga Center.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's been very nice to be able to share. I mean, as we have learned, and I really have appreciated, especially as have moved these numerous times, that building a community around yoga, that Sangha, is so important, because we can get so lost in our own little spaces,
Yeah.
even amongst our family, even amongst, we shut ourselves away in our little yoga room and emerge,
Yeah.
a little bit later.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like those Saturday mornings really are. It's your satsanga session of the week. So they're really special.
And it's nice that it got opened up to everybody. Yeah,
Yeah.
that everyone can come. And
Mhm.
again, the generosity, Prashant is like, I want everybody to be there, so invite everybody to come. So it's nice to see all those faces. Yeah.
Definitely. So I want to talk also about Jenny because the way I met you was through volunteering through INOS. And I know that you have volunteered with many of the regions that you've been a part of as you moved around. And I have found it so rewarding. And I know you have too. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Absolutely. So, I mean, and to me, that is the big question. You ask about legacy and how do
Mm,
we keep Guruji's name and legacy alive, and especially we are going, and I think about this a lot, that we are going to have, whole generations of not hearing his voice, of not really knowing who he is. I mean, I think that even now there's probably plenty of Iyengar yoga students who do Iyengar yoga but may not really have the sense of what that connection is.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
I feel like the reason I know that deep connection, or feel that deeper connection, is because he wasn't just some kind of person over in India that, yes, gave us this wealth of knowledge, amazing, amazing methodology, but meeting all the people from of course, all over the world, but even in the United States, every region is a little different. And so to
Mhm.
hear everybody's voices around Iyengar yoga is, to me, what will continue that. And if there's any one little spark that, BK Iyengar understood, there wasn't going to be one of us that could carry this on. And I think just those sparks that have been lit are important, and every one of them is important. And I think we come together in that service of our regions. Is it always a blast? No, as we know, it's also work. It's
Yeah.
also, but my, as much as assessment to me has built my, again, a little bit of confidence and a little bit of, again, social skills and that ability to show up in a space. I think working on boards with all kinds of different people, on committees with all kinds of different people, again, in the Midwest. The only reason I didn't serve in the Northwest because I wasn't there long enough, but I've been a member of all of those regions, and a priceless way to get to know, to listen to understand the richness of every single one of our practices and how it touches us and feeds us and is a part of our lives. I think all of us want it to be more a part of our life.
Yeah.
It's just being given the ways to do it. And to me, that's, if you're a student of Iyengar yoga, if you're a teacher of Iyengar yoga, just finding that community, building the community if there isn't one. I mean, there wasn't an Iyengar community in Rockford, Illinois. You build it,
Yeah.
you figure it out. And, to be able to just share. I think we all have something to share, and that is what makes Iyengar Yoga, and it's what it'll keep us going. We're not one of us is ever going to have the voice that an Iyengar has.
Right.
It's that power of, as Prashant talks about a lot, that because Iyengar's dharma was to really propagate yoga. I think that takes a power that is now needed by a lot of us to come together to do that, to keep it propagated.
Yeah.
So I have absolutely, I always have to take a little break. I've been on a break for a year, I guess. Can't remember. It's probably been a little longer than a year now. But the upper Midwest was just, it was like, oh, I could step back into it. They were
Oh
looking
gosh.
for, some new, but I was like, okay, I'll take one more. I'll take one more little bit off and then I'll be back to it. Because it does take work. It's work and time, as you know. But it's definitely something that I think is helpful. And I do think, would say that maybe I balked the first time when they put it in the assessment manuals to like have it be a requirement to go to India, and sort of like, well, but it's expensive and it's this and it's that and it's whatever. But I just, after just coming back, I, to encourage people not just to, yes, find your community here, but if there is any way, even one time, I think it's just important to see, to feel, and to be in that space that's so, it's culturally significant to our community. It's definitely spiritually significant to our community. So I think that those are the things that really will keep us together and moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. And just as you were talking, I was thinking part of the reason, because a lot of people have the same story that you have in terms of, oh, I started yoga and I wasn't really that into it, and it was, some other kind of yoga. But then when you had an Iyengar yoga teacher, and why is that? Because of their intersection with BKS Iyengar. And do you know what I mean? And what he was able
Mm-hmm.
to ignite in that teacher, you could feel that as a student. And so that's really amazing. Like his teaching is still
Oh,
there.
yes, and I will absolutely say, I mean, all of us are privileged to have lived in the same life. I mean, we will not live
Yeah.
in the same lifetime as a person like that.
No.
I think it's a very rare occurrence.
Mhm.
And so he did hold personal, power in and of himself, and then was able to share that throughout the world. The idea of the light, I think, is such that he used in every one of his books, shedding light
Yes.
on the topics, but he shed light on yoga
Mhm.
for all of us, I think. So yeah. And I just want, also that encouragement to have people find all the different ways. I always think too that it's such a blessing to have also had Gita and Prashant and Abhi and all the list goes on of the Rimi teachers who spent every waking day. I mean, they're there at the institute, every day's practice. They're there doing work at the institute, just like anything. It's their job, but it's also their life. And I think that all of those voices do come together also as Iyengar Yoga. So I think putting one in a box or another in a box or just BKS Iyengar or whatever, I think finding all of those ways to connect to the subject and connect to the practice. And there's so many ways to do that. And I think students too, they might have one. I mean, that's why I'm always encouraging people, go to your sub class, take some workshop, whatever. Because if you're only hearing the one voice, we were just talking about this the other day, actually, that, you know, when the one voice is talking, you can kind of tune it out and I think we can do this with any teacher. But the one voice, you either start to think, they're not talking to me, or, unless they say your actual name, or the cadence of the voice is just soothing now, or whatever it might be. So the minute that you get a different voice in your head or in front of you for a second, it's like, oh, there's something else. There's something new, even if it's not new,
Right. They could be saying the exact same thing you've already heard 100.
Absolutely. It's the age-old student comes back from the workshop story, right?
Yeah.
That, oh my gosh, I learned this new thing to lift my kneecaps. And you're like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Student or teacher. I think we've all done it. Guess what?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I think that those, again, it's just that reminder that so many of those voices come together as Iyengar Yoga as we move forward without BKS Iyengar as the voice.
Yeah.
And to show movement, I think one of our plans going forward is to really make a concerted effort to introduce students by videos, by movies, having movie nights. That was one thing too in Pune. They've started, I don't know if it's a continuous thing, but again, one of the days we were there for practice, they turn on Gita. So you're in the group, you're in practice hall, practice time, but it's Gita's class and it's Gita's voice, and still work hard even though she's not there. So I think those things are important too.
Definitely.
And that's where our regions and INOS and really doing work to keep that digital footprint also alive, I think will be helpful.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jennie. This has been a great talk, and it's just fun for me to see you.
So great to see you. Great to see you. Thank you so much for even thinking about me. I think it's nice. It's nice to hear, again, different voices. We're all the different generations. I think all of that's nice.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of On the Light. In getting to know Jennie, what I have come to love about her is her devotion not only to studying, but to bring people together to study. She's currently hosting a small book club on Prashantji's books on the Yoga Sutras. She's also present each Saturday morning for Prashantji's philosophy discussions that are hosted by INOS. So with that, I wanted to close out today's episode with an excerpt from an article in Yoga Rahasya, Volume 15, Number 3, 2008, by Prashant Iyengar. He says, asanas seem to be a very physical endeavor since you have to do something with the body. It is possible that students who are very sincere in their asana practice may get caught in the body dynamics, adjustment, correction, alignment, as there are so many applications. It is possible for them to become actionaholics. Asanas are done by the body, but are not totally for the body. Asanas are part of yoga, and yoga is primarily for the consciousness. Yoga is for the mind. It should be done by the body for the mind. Since yoga is done by the body, it is possible that one might do it by the body and just for the body. And when that happens, one might get caught in actionaholism and physiocracy. If through asana your goal is something on the plane of consciousness, your goal is something on the plane of the mind, something of the plane of faculties, then practice of asanas will not be actionaholism. You become thoughtful, you become pensive, you become discriminative. These faculties are triggered through the practice of asanas. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to like, share, or subscribe. If you're able, a small monthly contribution helps sustain this continued production of the podcast. Thank you for listening. Namaskar.